Paris woke to a pearly dawn as Tintin tightened the strap on his satchel and studied a curious envelope left at his door, stamped with a wax seal bearing a stylized compass rose. Inside lay a fragment of parchment, brittle and browned, inked with a faint grid and an elegant hand. To the one who believes maps are stories in disguise, follow the rose to what the cartographers hid. Snowy snuffled the paper, ears pricking, and Captain Haddock, already halfway through his coffee, muttered something about navigational nonsense and scallywags. The fragment S watermark matched that of an atlas stolen from a private collection 3 nights earlier, an atlas rumored to map routes that never appeared on any printed page. Inspector Duval had warned Tintin off the case, suspecting a dangerous ring of thieves. But the seal's compass rose pointed toward Armand Volkov, a suave art dealer whose silk hospitality concealed a trace of cold calculation. Volkov, it seemed, had been buying up obscure atlases and shiplogs at auction, and every acquisition coincided with whispers of hidden caches left by cartographers who smuggled truth into their margins. Waypoints of resistance, coordinates of refuge, and treasures meant to fund causes that could not breathe in plain daylight. Professor Calculus arrived with a contraption resembling a magnifying monocle sprouting gears and lenses. With it, the fragment's faint grid unveiled a second layer, a pattern of tiny roses leading to the old port of St. Malo. By noon, Tintin, Snowy, and Haddock stood on salt-sprayed parapets as gulls wheeled overhead. In a bookshop smelling of rope and paper, a retired cartographer recalled rumors of a rose passage, charted by 5 masters who encoded their names in winds rather than words. At low tide, a stone engraved with a compass in the seawall revealed a line of sight to an abandoned semaphore tower. There, beneath the rusted crank, Tintin found a hollow containing a delicate brass dial and a thin steel needle. Calculus's monocle revealed minute inscriptions that aligned with the atlas fragment, suggests a sequence of bearings that would spring the trail from Europe to North Africa. Volkov's men were already watching. Through alleys of granite, past swinging nets and barrels, Tintin and Haddock dodged pursuit and boarded a weathered freighter whose captain owed Haddock a favor. Beyond the narrow strait, waves hammered the bow, and Snowy howled at the spray as if urging them onward. Marrakesh greeted them with the scent of cedar and spice. Rashida Darzi, a guide whose reputation for integrity preceded her, took one glance at the brass dial and led them through a souk to a secluded courtyard where tile patterns mirrored the dial S roses. With Calculus's gadget and Rashida's keen eye, the rose bloomed into a new set of bearings, east to a desert plateau where the wind wrote its own map. Under a sky-hammered blue, they rode at dawn, shadows stretching long across rippling sands. At the plateau's edge, a line of basalt pillars formed a giant sundial. When the needle aligned with shadow and the brass dial clicked, a panel in the rock slid aside to reveal a chamber, cool as a tomb walls painted with constellations and roots not in ink, but in crushed lapis and gold leaf. It was a library of hidden paths, created by cartographers who believed maps should carry people, not just goods, safely through storms of history. Volkov arrived with a convoy, his smile polite, his words smooth. He spoke of preserving heritage through private stewardship, then demanded the chamber's contents be packed under guard. When his men stepped forward, Snowy darted between boots, Haddock roared with an oath that shook dust from the ceiling, and Tintin tilted the brass dial, triggering a second mechanism. The pillar's shadows spun as panels slid shut, blocking exits and scattering the intruders. Rashida led a dive through a narrow fissure where a trickle of water sang. Outside, Calculus, who had wandered off in thought, returned with a solar mirror rigged from his lenses, flashing signals to Duval's patrol now cresting the dunes. Volkov, cornered but composed, said truth was safer in private hands than in a world that might twist it. Tintin simply answered that truth belongs on open maps, where people find their way. The cartographer's chamber was entrusted to a museum and digitized so its routes could guide refugees, travelers, and seekers of history. Back in Paris, dawn again silvered the streets. Tintin placed the brass dial by his window, Snowy curled in contented sleep, and Haddock sipped tea with suspicious calm. Calculus tinkered, proposing a map that hums when you're close to a path meant for courage. Somewhere, Volkov's compass rose winked out. Yet Tintin knew the world's greatest routes still hid in the margins, waiting for those who believed maps are stories in disguise. And when the next envelope arrived, Snowy was first to the door.